This afternoon's tactical enhancement is Hatlifter Stout, and today we're playing Warhammer. 4,000 points of Warhammer. This afternoon's game of Warhammer, 4,000 points of my Wood Elves against Emilio's Chaos Army, mainly Chaos Nurgle with a few rather unattractive friends. The mission today is Meeting Engagement, which has the table divided diagonally. Everyone's a bit more close than usual, and we've got a bunch of units which have randomly been rolled off as being being in reserve, basically coming in whenever we see fit from our own table edge. This has thrown a bit of a spanner in the works. You can see our deployment here is at diagonals, but we've both clustered our forces at rather opposite ends of the table, which will make for an interesting confrontation, probably in two halves. But let's look at the armies. Okay, Emilio, talk us through what you have.
Alright, predominantly Chaos Nurgle, 4,000 points. Over here we've got a unit of 3 Nurgling swarms. There's a large block of, we've got in there is the Plague Bearers, and in with the Plague Bearers we've got the Herald of Nurgle.
Yeah.
And behind them, covering their flanks, we've actually got the Beasts of Nurgle. I've used different models because I don't have identical models, but being a backyard game, we're quite flexible with that. So there's 3 different models, but this is the latest Age of Sigmar model, and this is an old school
Alright, so we'll count them all as being 40 by 40 mil bases if we ever have to do the maths on frontage.
And then we've got 4 plague drones in that unit.
Right.
We've got our Chaos Chariots, and they've been upgraded as well, so they're a little bit more nasty when they hit. A new acquisition is the Chimera.
Okay,
what a nasty flying monster.
Yes, very unattractive.
And behind the Chimera, we've got this big boy here. So he's the Slaughter brute. And you've probably seen these guys play before. I've got 3 Hell Cannons with their Chaos Dwarf crew.
I'm not a fan of Hell Cannons, and I'd complain bitterly, except it is a 4,000 point game, so actually 3 of them is not unreasonable in a battle of this size.
Hidden in the forest, I've got my General, which is the great unclean one.
Righto.
And he's the old school metal model, and of course now you've got the Age of Sigmar plastic model, which is 3 times the size. Yep. But so I've put him on some stones to make him look bigger, make him stand out.
So he's got Napoleon complex.
Yeah. And I apologise if I don't pronounce this correctly. Epidemus, which is a classic figure. This is old school metal as well, but he does a lot of buffs for the for Nurgle. Right. And there's a little mage in here, which is the Herald of Tzench, and he's supporting the units with his spells. And I've got some in reserve. So I deployed after Chris, but I rolled a 1. So there's another block of Plague Bearers and a second Chimera. So I've got a lot of large blocks that are slow moving, but then I've got a lot of fast moving units as well.
This is a monster mash, actually. There's a lot of big individual pieces of the table. Right. And as Emilio pointed out, with this mission, one person gets to choose their table triangle and deploy first, and that was me, and then the other person gets to deploy their army in response to that, but we both have units off table in reserve. This shot shows pretty much the entirety of the Wood Elves. The bulk of my forces are at the far opposite end of the table from Emilio's cannon, which is actually good, but it does mean that he's pitting his entire army against a very small percentage of mine, and his army's out of range of my archers. May or may not be a problem, we'll see how it goes. I've got 2 units of 18 archers, and there's a standard bearer and a hero in one of those units who are supposed to be in the Eternal Guard unit, but the Eternal Guard unit got thrown into reserve, separate to the characters. So that buggered up my battle line rather a little bit. We can see here the Dryads in the forest, a level 4 mage there, hiding for the moment, and Lord on Dragon. Some lovely war dancers in the forest there. As we move across the table a little bit, 3 Warhawks. Not quite sure what I'm going to do with them against this enormous beastie army over here, but they may yet prove themselves useful. In the woods here, we have 19 Glade Guard, the skirmishing variant, whatever they're called. They're technically in skirmish formation. I've not bothered to put them that way because I'm going to be moving them a fair bit. And there's a level 2 mage there, and you can just see picking between the trees there's a Waste Stalker. I took the Waste Stalker just because I needed to make up a few points in order to get up to 4,000. Now, and over here there's a couple of Great Eagles and 8 Glade Riders. Everyone who can take poison arrows has them. Probably work out very useful in this particular battle, I would think. And as you can see, there's not a lot of space between almost the entirety of Emilio's army and this small percentage of my army over here. So this could work out. I may have to redeploy en masse and it becomes a standoff, or it may become a fight in 2 halves. And the first half I think might not be that good for me. In reserve we have 24 Eternal Guard. I would hope to have a character in that unit. That custom treeman that I drag out from time to time, and 6 Way Watchers. It could be worse. These get to come on when I choose somewhere on my back line. Won't make any difference to the Way Watchers. They will do what they were going to do anyway, and the treeman and the block of Eternal Guard can come on at the same turn, so we do have some fighting chops still in reserve. Right, this is the dice roll for first turn, and the specifics of this mission are you roll a d6, and on a 1 to 5, I think it is, the person who deployed first gets first turn, otherwise on a 6 the other guy gets first turn, which is just enough to be very annoying. Let's see how we go. 3, right, the Woodies get first turn. Lovely. Well, we will check in, I think, at the end of that turn. End of turn 1, and we have killed a grand total of 1 Plague Bearer. We've taken a wound off a Shimmer and a wound off of a Plague Drone. Not great, I have to say. On the plus side, I did throw 6 dice all at once for my magic, and even though it was dispelled, I managed to avoid my mage exploding, which is always good. Still not entirely sure how I'm going to win this fight. It's a bit of a different one. First turn's rolling didn't achieve a lot, although to be honest I wasn't expecting a lot. What I've also done is I've moved up the dragon character, because I think I'm going to have to make some sort of a stand on this side of the table. Without the dragon they won't last more than about 2 or 10 seconds or so. And it's a bit premature to have brought in my reserves. So I think at this stage we'll see how the rest of the turn 1 goes with the Nurgle before we do anything else. And we'll check in at the end of Nurgle turn 1. It's now the end of turn 1 and Nurgle are advancing, but more cautiously than you might have thought. We had some poor luck with the archers when they shot in their own turn, but then in turn they've had some good fortune with the Plague Bearers charging on in. We did just enough damage to them to knock off 1 Plague Drone on the way in. And then we've done another couple of wounds in the melee in exchange for the loss of 5 Glade Guard. It's worth noting the spell which I tried to cast last turn was Occam's Mind Razor, which would have given them a strength 8 in the melee, those Glade Guard, but Amelia very prudently dispelled that. So we're now in a meat grinder here, Chariots advanced. The Plague Bearers, I think they advanced a little bit, but they didn't charge. They didn't want to get distracted by that eagle there and then have who knows what on their flank. Probably also would have disrupted the charge of those plague drones. Over here, the Chariots have advanced because they were too far away to really bother trying to charge, and this Chimera rolled a pair of 2s on the charge, so he only moved forward 2 inches. Very fortunate, because otherwise he would have pretty much obliterated these Glade Riders. Having a bit of trouble with lighting control here with the clouds coming and going. So that's all that really happened, and then Emilio, he did cast a couple of spells actually. One spell bumped off half the wounds off of that unit of Warhawks. There's only 1.5 left now. And the other spell I think we dispelled. Then Emilio reminded me that we'd forgotten the shooting phase, and he fired his Hell Cannon. And 2 of them just missed wildly. The first one did land on target, but also misfired and rolled a 1. Free at last, the demon escaped, and then Emilio rolled 3 5s for the blast radius of the exploding cannon, and that bumped a wound each off of one of these Hell Cannon and that Chimera. So it was pretty spectacular. This other one got away, the lucky bastard, but that would have been a bit too much to ask. I do think that Emilio actually did more damage to himself than what I did to him in turn 1. But that's that for turn 1. Still anyone's game. We will check in at the end of Wood Elf turn 2. Alright, end of Wood Elf's turn 2. So we manoeuvred these Glade Riders into a safe position, and they took another wound off the Chimera. Emilio remembered that that thing actually has regen, which we'd forgotten all about. And because we're playing a very friendly match, we let him do the regen rolls for the previous turns, so we'd forgotten about that as well.
And I got my regen.
And he got all these fucking regens, so he got a pile of wounds back from last turn, but it still rolled pretty well, so we're still in the wash-up, knocked 1 wound off of the Chimera. We got the magic spell off Occam's Mind Razor. No, that got off, but then it was dispelled. Then the other mage, the level 4 mage over here, cast a suitably high amount to reduce the toughness of these plague drones
to 2.
Then the Wood Elves rolled really fucking well, but then the plague drones rolled really fucking well, and I think they only lost like a wound or 2 all up. They then proceeded to damage the Blade Guard a little bit, not too much, just a little bit. That in turn forced them to take a leadership test, and then they rolled 11. They were stubborn with the general's leadership of 10, and they rolled 11, and they ran away, and the Plague Drones chased them down. So that's the end of my first core unit. Things were going rather swimmingly right up to the point where that happened. So still, it's early days. It's over to the Chaos turn 2. But then you like to blow up another Hell Cannon, and we'll check in at the end of Chaos turn 2. It's the end of Nurgle's turn 2, and very little happened. A fair bit of manoeuvring, just reforming to attack what remains of the Wood Elf lines. The Plague Drones moved to be a bit safer there, and magic didn't achieve much, and only shooting of note was 1 cannon on these Glade Riders, and they killed 4 out of the 8, which is alright. There's 4 1s. These Hell Cannon are horrendous. They are monstrous guns. But Emilio rolled pretty average at the end of the day. On the other hand, he did hit them. So anyway, so that's it for casualties. The Glade Guards just stick around. We're moving into Wood Elf turn 3 now. Oh, and the other thing of note is that Emilio has committed his reserves. So we've got 1 Chimera here, and we have 1 unit of Plague Bearers there that have marched into the forest. So I now know where his forces are which means there's not going to be any rude surprise attacks down this flank over here, which means I'm free to redeploy all of these troops to address the known threat. So we'll check in at the end of Wood Elf turn 3. During Wood Elf turn 3, we redeployed the fast cav again, but there's not enough of them left. They didn't do any damage. We brought on the snipers, who Emilio very kindly let me bring on out of sequence. They took 1 wound off of the plague drones, and that reduces that unit to 1 plague drone. Manoeuvred a little bit to hide behind the trees, and we have a little visitor in the background there. And we moved on the remainder of the Wood Elf units, so that's my 2 main melee combat units have now turned up. And we've also moved up the archers. You can't shoot this turn, they won't be able to shoot really until turn 4, and the Dryads have come out to play. During the magic phase, we managed to get, well, what's the name of that damn thing? Pit of Shades to work on full power, and it deviated quite handsomely and just only managed to kill 2 of the Beasts of Nurgle, which isn't a great return on investment from Misfire, which reduced that mage to level 0. On the other hand, I hate Beasts of Nurgle with such venom that I'll take it as a moral victory, even though points wise it was a bit average. So that's it at the end of turn 3 for the Wood Elves. It's now turn 3 for the Nurgle guys. We'll check in at the end of that. End of turn 3, chaos turn 3, and what's happened? Well, they moved away from the enemy. Emilio assures me they're not running away. He's absolutely convinced they're not running away, even though they are moving directly away from the entire Wood Elf army.
I'll have a point here. The general is in a dragon, and I'd seen the dragon land in the forest, and I'm saying to myself, everybody regroup, because we're going to hit his general unless his general flies away. And that's where the game is, right in this forest. So everyone's readying themselves for a charge.
Everyone's got a story for why they ran away. Anyway, so that happened. So the Herald cast a spell which buffs the toughness of that unit of Plague Bearers. They're toughness 7 for a turn, but in the process miscast and is no longer a mage, so that's useful. Pretty much exactly what happened to my mage, my level 2 mage last turn. During the shooting phase, both Hell Cannons shot, and they both landed directly on target, and they between them wiped out the unit of Way Watchers. Unfortunately, the Way Watchers were the only thing that I couldn't hide. The rest of my army is advancing undercover from those cannon. So, alas, that was the end of that. And the Zench fellow finally got off his Bolt of Doom and knocked off one of the Clade Riders. So that's it, that's the end of turn 3. We move on to turn 4 now. Wood Elves turn first, and we'll check in at the end of that. Alright, a very short Wood Elf turn. Magic didn't really work. Shooting, very little shooting going on. Oops, I forgot one thing, I'll just do that now. This general's going to shoot at this guy. Hit. Roll a 1. Okay, well that's going well. His cavalry over here shot at that little bastard there. It's got 1 wound left. We really just need to knock 1 wound off of that guy. Now, as for the rest of the army, what Emilio wants me to do is to march my whole army for the remaining 3 shooting phases of the Chaos army toward his army while he runs away and hits me with cannon. I'm not going to do that. So I'm moving just outside the range of his cannon. So the bottom line is that Emilio wants me to do something really, really stupid, and I don't want to do it. And he's running away. He's actually using Wood Elf tactics.
In the open. There's not one forest here. I'm in the open.
He's got a Nurgle army using Wood Elf tactics
and
of running
these guys,
away and
these guys have not run away. Running away is going in the opposite direction, but they actually haven't gone in the opposite direction.
Notice everybody around them has run backwards.
we were actually getting ready for a charge by that dragon and the general. The charge didn't happen, and they're now having to decide what position to take.
They're milling about because I brought my reinforcements in and we went from an isolated pocket of troops to a reasonable fighting group, which frankly I think this noble army could smash in a turn, but they don't want to risk it, so they're going to sit back and hope they'll do something dumb. Not very exciting, I'm afraid, but anyway, we're over to the turn 4 for the noble forces, and we'll see what happens. Alright, another extremely short turn. Basically what happened is the noble army continued to retreat. Other events of note: one of the hell cannon fired, deviated, clipped a couple of glade guard, no big deal really. It's worth noting that his range turned out to be marginally more than what I thought it was, because they can move and shoot. Lesson learned for the next turn. And this Shimmerer here charged the remaining 3 Glade Riders who fled because it causes terror. They rolled an 11. So this battle is turning out to be an example of, shall we say, scaredy cats running away. There's been rather a lot of it, rather a lot of leadership roles in the 11 to 12 range, and a lot of armies refusing to commit to a fight.
I have to counter that and say my reserves came on to reinforce my existing units, and so I've got a cluster in the one area. So there isn't 2 battles going on, was supposed to be just 1 battle going on, and it's here. But the general with the dragon and the treeman decided not to engage my army, and so my army's basically been waiting for them to come out of the forest. They haven't come out of the forest.
And
that's not running away. They're not
going to run out of the forest. And most of the Wood Elf army is actually all the way over here with zero prospect of even catching up with it.
Now, Chris did send his reserves in.
Well, these are over here, ready to fight. And they've been moving as fast as they can toward the fight, but the fight just keeps running away. On that note, it's up to turn 5 for the Wood Elves. And since everything's now run away out of archery range, leaving this big and massive dead ground for him to paste them with cannon, which will just kill them on a 2+ if they actually hit anything, is absolute suicide to advance in the open. So it'll be another short turn, I think. Okay, it's now the end of turn 5 for both Wood Elves and the Daemons. Didn't bother to film the Wood Elf part because nothing's really happened on either side. Grand total of fuck all magic of significance has occurred. It's actually got through. The Nurgle's been buffed a bit, but that doesn't really matter. Because nobody's committing to combat. Because if I throw my lot into his lot, my lot will be annihilated in short order. I think I'm going to call the game here. I think at this juncture, there's not much we can really do with the remaining single turn of the game. So that's it. I guess the Nurgles head on points because they took out a Glade Guard unit, a Glade Rider unit. That's it in terms of full units gone. We did Hell Cannon blew itself up.
3 Plague Drains.
The Plague Drain unit's wounded, but we don't get points for them, and there's some wounds on a couple other chaps around the joint, but we don't get points for those.
You took out 2 of my Nurgle beasts with magic.
That 2 Nurgle beasts. Yeah, I mean, look, if we were giving points for half units destroyed,
it would be a draw.
You know, yeah, I'd probably get a few more points out of that than what the Noble guys would. But as it is, it's an extremely low point game. It's actually a draw because the difference in points is minuscule relative to the size of the game. So that's it. A very un-Warhammer game of Warhammer.
What did we learn, Chris?
What we learnt is if you want to have a fun game, you've actually got to attack.
I think what I've learned is when we deployed, it was a case of half take a side, but it was more of take a corner, really, and that probably separated us to the maximum distance. So getting to the other side, when you've got a Wood Elf army with archers who all use poison, that's going to cause a lot of damage to any army that tries to find its way to the enemy who's hiding in the forest for most of the game. So it's a challenge to move forward against poison arrows in large numbers. That's a lot of dice being thrown for 3, maybe 4 turns. So from deployment, it was hard to do the distance. So the next strategy was, how do you survive with the combat that you have nearby? And so we tried to commit combat in large numbers, and I think overall we've won the battle because we won those close combats.
Oh, you keep just telling yourself that, buddy.
Well, you only have to look at the points to see which units have been destroyed. I haven't lost any units.
How many points is the Hell Cannon?
210 points.
Okay, so 210 points is about the same as the Glade Riders. And the only difference really is the Glade Guard.
Yeah.
That's the only advantage in actual points. So Glade Guard killed. They're about 300 points.
So we're pretty even on points for casualties. I would say pretty close to that.
You're 300 points up, but in a 4,000 point game, that doesn't make
Yeah,
sense.
it's not much. It's not much. So look, it was one of those sort of games, if we deployed differently or if we had an objective that we had to achieve, then that would have actually pushed us either into combat or pushed us towards an objective. And maybe that's a lesson learned for a large army, is push the army, even if it's uncomfortable, to reach an objective. I think we have to take that into account.
That's absolutely true. I mean, I deployed first, and then you could deploy wherever you wanted. I think the thing which has actually swung this entire game is the deployment of the Hell Cannon. They're out of range of the archers, so there was no return fire against the archers for you to move up.
60 inches range is huge, and
Yes.
the battle is being fought from one end of the table to the other end of the table, rather than one side, the shortest side, to the other shortest side. And I think that changed the battle strategy for Chris moving forward, and it definitely changed my strategy to concentrate my attacks on the closest enemy. So that's how it turned out. Chris is very experienced in the use of his Wood Elves. He's very experienced in using the forest to his advantage. He rolled for the maximum number of forest terrain for this game.
I got 2 out of the potential 3 because I don't have that many pieces of forest terrain. But yeah, the terrain was fine for the Wood Elves. There's no problem with that. Anyway, on that note, domestic duty's cool. Time to call it a day.